Guitar Co-op Podcasts. Great composers. Conceived and presented by Fabio Zanon. I started learning the guitar with my father when I was about 8 years old. He taught me to read music using two methods, the famous bona solfege method and an Argentine guitar method called La Escuela de la Guitarra, the School of the Guitar, by Mario Rodriguez Arenas. The Arenas method had a very old-fashioned look. It resembled an alchemy book found in a second-hand bookstore. But today I see it had many merits. The greatest of these was that it was really progressive, and it was a compilation of lessons extracted from 19th century methods. I was a child, I had no idea what that meant, but I remember that some of the lessons had funny names. Lesson number 14, Di Aguado. Lesson number 19, En Cost. I couldn't really tell what that was all about, but later on in my life, I learned that they refer to great composers and guitarists of the past. Dionísio Aguado, Napoleon Cost. And if you have been listening to our podcasts, you already know the music of some of them. It turns out that at that time, concert music by those composers didn't have much circulation. It was virtually unknown. Edson Lopes playing Concerto Opus 8A, arranged for solo guitar by himself. It's a track in his album Edson Lopes in Concert, a Guitar Co-op release. There are many reasons for that, and we'll discuss them throughout the episode, but Arenas' book had lessons number 29 and 32 by F. Carulli. I love playing those two. They were delightful to play. It really felt good under the fingers, unlike those marked Aguado or Cano, which were always very difficult. From then on, I played with much more pleasures, lessons bearing Carulli's name. Some of them seemed like dramatic scenes and some sounded like tarantellas. Christian Saggese playing Rondeau from École de Guitare, Opus 241 by Carulli. Only much later did I photocopy a nocturne for flute, violin and guitar, and there was the name I had already forgotten, Ferdinando Carulli. Only then did I realize that Carulli was a composer, not a name for an exercise. There I was already about 15 years old and well versed in the music by Mozart and Beethoven, and that seemed like trivial music. It was fun and delightful to play, but it was trivial. My friends and I played it precisely for that, to relax, because our fellow musicians looked down on music by Carulli. Il classico terzetto italiano playing Nocturno Opus 24 by Carulli. Until quite late in the 1980s, apart from a few specialists who made recordings for obscure labels, only two composers of the so-called classicism on the guitar were played, Sor and Giuliani, and we have already made episodes about their music. But a curiosity remained about Carulli. Who was that guy? Did he also have concert music for solo guitar? If so, why didn't anyone play it? Was it published? At one point, I bought a vinyl record by a celebrity duet, Julian Bream and John Williams, playing together. It had a piece, once again pretty trivial but very much fun, by Carulli. Julian Bream and John Williams playing one duet, Opus 34, by Carulli. You can listen to these tracks complete in the playlist that we have prepared to accompany this episode, and you can access through the link in the episode description. I started collecting sheet music from everything that came my way. One of them was a Fantasia for flute and guitar, Opus 337. That was a shock. How could a composer who had published more than 300 works be virtually unknown? It turns out that was the 80s, and two things happened during that time that created a shift in how we viewed the guitar repertoire. First, the creation of post-graduations and PhD courses in guitar around the world. Out of the blue, historical musicology applied to the guitar ceased to be a specialty of a handful of people. Hundreds of people around the world began to investigate and publish works by forgotten 19th century composers like Giuliani, Kost, or Merz. Those are composers that you probably know a bit more about after listening to the podcast Great Composers. But not only that, this was synchronized with the invention of digital CD recording, which created a sudden boom of independent record labels who avoided competition with the large corporations by recording music that was obscure. Suddenly, many guitarists began playing those works, unearthed from the catacombs of history. But there's still one name that didn't take off even after that, Carulli. What was the problem with Carulli? We are listening to Richard Savino playing Sonata Opus 3, number 3 by Carulli. I've asked my friend Stanley Yates, a great British guitarist and musicologist, what is the reason for the comparative obscurity of Carulli?
Hi Fabio, thanks for asking me to contribute a little bit to the podcast. There are a number of reasons that might explain why it's taken so long for Carulli to be recognised as more than a writer of teaching pieces. First of all, there's just so much music to go through. And until quite recently, it wasn't easy to get hold of. And there's more being discovered in manuscript. So just going through it and assessing it is quite a big job. Then there's the notation. Most of the music was published in the early violin style of single stem notation, which gives a very misleading impression of the music. If we renotate these scores polyphonically, we find that the textures are in fact complete with independent melody, accompaniment and a lower voice. But this is again time-consuming work and it involves an awful lot of musical decision-making. Then there's the idea that Carulli didn't publish his concert pieces because his publishers didn't think they could sell them. And there may well be some truth to this. But he did publish concert-worthy pieces, quite a lot of them, both for chamber music and solo music. We just need to weed them out.
Aniello Desiderio, a GuitarCoop artist, playing solo, Opus 76, number 2 by Carulli.
Then there's a general idea that Carulli's music isn't particularly sophisticated. Well, it's true, we won't find very much in terms of counterpoint, chromatic harmony, serious minor mode works, but what we do find is an expert writer of melodies and engaging, characterful sonata themes, some very interesting forms, and of course a layer of brilliant passage work. But we need to understand the style Carulli's writing in. It isn't exactly the Haydn, Mozart, Pleyel trajectory, it's the slightly earlier classical galant style of composers such as J.C. Bach, Sammartini, Alberti, and especially, I think, Domenico Cimarosa. If we listen to Cimarosa's best-known opera, Il Matrimonio Segreto, The Secret Marriage, we find virtually a blueprint for Carulli's overture Sinfonia-style sonatas. And we listen to the arias, and that gives us a lot more. We listen to the keyboard sonatas of these kinds of composers, and that gives us the rest.
This is a duet from the opera Il Matrimonio Segreto, The Secret Wedding by Cimarosa, played by the English Chamber Orchestra, conducted by Daniel Barenboim.
But the final issue, despite the fact that Julian Bream and John Williams recorded brilliantly a couple of Carulli's duets, No player with that kind of profile has taken on Carulli's solo music, probably because it simply wasn't readily available, and this has helped keep it out of the mainstream repertoire. But we have a good number of specialised players dealing with this music now, and hopefully the general situation regarding Carulli will change.
Julian Bream and John Williams playing the second movement of a duo by Carulli. By the way, this theme is especially well known in England because it was the opening theme from a TV show from the 80s, The Adventure Game. Before discussing Carulli's biography, and there's very little that is known about him, it's necessary to outline the state of the guitar at the turn of the 18th to the 19th century. There's an intriguing phenomenon. Italy produced great guitarists and composers by the dozens, but practically all of them went to live abroad, most of them in Paris. This is a fragment from Gossek's La Bataille. All musical life in France in the years leading up to the Revolution were focused in Paris. The first great music school, the Royal School of Singing, was founded there. After the Revolution, the National Guard created dozens of brass bands. That created a huge demand for wind instrument instruction. And that led to the creation of the National Institute of Music in 1792. In 1996, the two schools merged to create the Conservatoire de Musique. That was the first of its kind in Europe and a model that was imitated worldwide and that remains, to this day, the #1 conservatoire in France. Composers such as Gossec, Grétry, and Sarret occupied administrative positions and developed a style of martial music designed to mobilize the masses. This style swept across much of Europe. Beethoven's captivating and liberating music is one of the byproducts of this historical moment. This is the hugely famous fourth movement from Beethoven's Fifth Symphony, performed by the Chamber Orchestra of Europe, conducted by Nicolaus Harnoncourt. How does the guitar fit into all this noise? Well, until then, the guitar was a favorite instrument among the aristocracy. Obviously, it wouldn't be heard amidst all the noise of the bands. However, in 1776, there was a change of legislation, and that gave more freedom to instrument makers. That increased the availability of guitars for all social classes, and that was combined too with the invention of metal strings. Those features combined made the guitar the most popular instrument at home from 1789 onwards, especially among women and immigrants who could not afford to carry the popular pianos and harps that had been available until then. Maurizia Barazzoni, soprano, and Sandro Volta, guitar, playing Frena le belle lagrime by Carulli. Music publishing industry was another factor. It had been dominated by practically one single family, the Ballards, for over 200 years. At the beginning of the 19th century, this monopoly fell and new printing technologies appeared. Paris was invaded with new music publishers. Musicians from all over Europe were drawn by the promise of a lucrative market and moved in exodus to the capitals that had a robust publishing industry, especially Paris, Vienna, London, and St. Petersburg. This is Marcello Fantoni playing one of the three overtures, Opus 6 by Carulli. On the other hand, we have Naples, the city where Carulli was born, in the same year as Beethoven, 1770. There, conservatories had a different profile. They were orphanages that offered musical education to the poor and to orphans. Since the boys were requested to live as boarders for approximately 10 years, their training was meticulous. All of them received training in singing and compositions and were required to learn counterpoint and partimento. Many of them underwent a cruel surgery just before adolescence so that they would be placed as professionals in adulthood, because there was an activity of high demand around Europe, that of male sopranos or the castrati. Many of the great names in Italian music studied in Naples, actually. Scarlatti, Cimarosa, Pergolesi, Piccini, Durante, and Paisiello, just to mention the ones who are still played today.
ingannate, troppo, come mai voi volate? Io che Dio vi dico no, è un sogno questo sì, è un sogno questo sì.
The Ensemble Baroque de Nice playing a duetto from Pergolesi's La Serva Padrona. Carulli grew up in this environment rich in music but economically decadent. Naples was impoverished by the wars in the late 18th century, and after the Napoleonic invasion in 1799, the system of patronage and education was devastated. The courts, which were the main employers of guitarists, were weakened or dissolved. The music reproduction industry was still in the hands of copyists, and this combined with the fact that those who remained there only wanted to know about opera made life impossible for Italian musicians. They began to emigrate out of Italy in large numbers, seeking a more robust market to teach and publish their music. Paris was a preferred destination, and in Carulli's case, it was even natural because in 1801 he had married a French woman and had a son with her, who would later become a very well-known singing teacher. The guitar and piano duo of Franz and Deborah Hallas playing a duet by Carulli. This is a period of change in the guitar design. The guitar went from a 5-course instrument to a single 5-string instrument and to a 6-string instrument in a matter of few years. And it was crystallized in this 6-string format that remains to this day. String manufacturing technology made this possible because of metal filament strings. They were easier to tune, and the first 6-string guitars appeared in the 1760s, both in Italy and France. In Italy, it was even called the French guitar. This is Edson Lopez playing an Andante, opus 320 by Carulli, which is released by GuitarCoop. This instrument seduced Ferdinando Carulli. He came from a very well-to-do family. His father was a lawyer. He learned to play the cello from a priest, and at the age of 16 became interested in the guitar. Until the age of 30, he lived in his hometown, and he was very well known for his concerts and lessons. He then moved to Livorno and started to publish music around Europe. When he finally moved to Paris in 1809, his compositions were already pretty well known, and he became a sensation. All press reviews insist that Carulli had arrived to reform what was then understood as a guitar. Fetti, who was a famous historian and a conservatory professor, says that he achieved enormous success and that in a few years he published more than 100 works and cultivated unconditional admirations in the salons of high society. Carulli was complemented by Dušek, a famous keyboard composer, and Fetti says that Carulli was capable of writing much more complex music, but the need for simplicity was a request of the publishers and forced him to relinquish part of his talent. Thus, he became more frustrated as his success was the bigger. Giovanni 90, playing a fragment from a Fantasia, opus 204 by Carulli. Around the same time, other Italian and Spanish guitarists moved to Paris, most notably, of course, Fernando Sor and Dionisio Aguado, but also Matteo Carcassi and Francesco Molino. There is a famous satirical engraving from the time which shows a crowd of guitarists slapping each other and breaking guitars over each other's heads. It's called Discussion Between Carullists and Molinists. Even then, it seems that technical details provoked heated discussions. We don't know exactly, though, what they were fighting about in this engraving. I've always heard that they were fighting over whether they should play with or without nails, but it might be they were discussing about some other trivia. The duo Presti La Goya playing Serenade No. 3, opus 96 by Carulli. Carulli's published works reached number 366 and added to the extant manuscripts easily surpassed 400 works. There is no composer who could publish so much music if he didn't bring profit to the publishers. Even with the decline in guitar popularity at the end of his life, Carulli continued to publish music on his own and became also involved in guitar making projects. Together with Lacote, he registered the patent for a 10-string guitar called Decachord. He died in Paris in 1841, just a week after turning 71. I've asked Stanley Yates if there is any reason why we have so little information about such a successful guitarist and composer.
While new bits of information regarding Carulli's activities are coming to light, we have nothing like the kind of biographical detail that we have for figures such as Sor or Giuliani, which is enough for full-length biographical studies to have been published. It may just be that the sources don't exist. Hopefully they do, and we'll find them. But what we do know is that once Carulli arrived in Paris, which was probably in 1809, the distinguished publishing firm Pleyel had already published one of Carulli's concert sonatas. And what seems to have occurred immediately was something along the lines of a tsunami of publishing activity. Carulli appears to have immediately eclipsed all of the other guitarists active there, and if we go through the Torta catalogue of Carulli's published works, we find something like 100 distinct publishers situated throughout Europe publishing his music. Now this is just astonishing. It was literally a craze. And while we don't have much information regarding Carulli's performances, it's clear from the music itself that he was a real virtuoso, and surely the most adept guitarist in Paris at that time.
This is Richard Savino playing Carulli's Sonata Opus 5. You can hear the complete version of this piece in the playlist that we have prepared for you, and that follows this episode. So far, I've been ambivalent about Carulli. Of course, we know that he knew how to cater for his audience's tastes, but does the music really have a quality that holds up for a listener today other than historical curiosity? That reminds me of a joke. What is the difference between a rock guitarist and a jazz guitarist? Well, the fact is that the jazz guitarist plays 10,000 chords for 4 people, and the rock guitarist plays 4 chords for 10,000 people. Carulli is a kind of jazz guitarist who has decided to play rock for survival. But he's also a hostage. Why? Because rock bands usually become very successful when the members are 19 or 20 years old. The audience expectation creates a huge restriction on the style, because it's necessary to bring something new but not so new that the audience stops identifying with the band. So that hinders the band's musical growth. If this has happened with Queen or Oasis, why shouldn't it happen with Carulli? This is the guitarist Sonia Prumbauer playing with the forte pianist Robert Hill, Carulli's Grand Duo. I think Carulli has a work of unquestionable quality in his method, Opus 27. Between 1760 and 1810, no fewer than 38 guitar methods were published in Paris. Carulli placed himself on another level because his method was truly innovative. Not only he had much more music in it, but the lessons, they were organized in a much more progressive manner. He also included duets to be played by the student accompanied by the teacher. Even Fernando Sod, who was not prodigal in praise, wrote in his own method that Carulli was an exception among a group of composers who didn't know how to write music correctly. This is Christian Sagese playing music from Carulli's method Opus 27. Was Carulli not interested in singing? Quite the opposite. He simply didn't want to mix up things. He wrote a method for solo guitar and several methods for guitar accompaniment, guitar harmony, and vocal exercises with guitar accompaniment. In fact, Carulli's songs with guitar are among the best of his time. He displayed an unusual sensitivity to use the voice and to create interesting musical designs. They are among my favorite works by Carulli. Antonia E. Brown and Adriano Sebastiani playing one arietta by Carulli, Ecco quel fero istante. They also have recorded another vocal masterpiece that is the 6 nocturnes for 2 voices and guitar. Soprano Antonia E. Brown is accompanied by Adriano Sebastiani in one of Carulli's 6 nocturnes for 2 voices and guitar. But to my mind, there's at least one solo work where Carulli takes the score and rubs it against the face of those who criticize him. the Six Andantes, opus 320. They are not only Carulli's most sophisticated, sensitive, and well thought out works, they are as good as any other work from his time. Each one of them is a gem, and every guitarist should include some of these pieces in their repertoire. Edson Lopes playing one of Carulli's Six Andantes, opus 320, that was recorded by GuitarCoop in his album Allegro Sinfonico. You should listen to that, it's a beautiful album. Carulli wrote a few concertos for guitar and orchestra as well. There is very little information about the circumstances under which they were premiered. We don't know, for instance, what was the size of the orchestra. His concertos are some of the most representative works of this period. This is Pepe Romero playing Carulli's concerto in E minor, accompanied by the Academy of St. Martin and the Fields, led by Iona Brown. Carulli also wrote an unusual work, a concerto for flute, guitar, and orchestra. This is really a kind of historical curiosity, but it's still interesting enough to listen to. This is guitarist Kevin Lowe playing Carulli's concerto in G major for flute, guitar, and orchestra. Stanley Yates has just published several volumes containing all of Carulli's sonatas and overtures for solo guitar. It's a work that finally gives us an understanding of the magnitude of Carulli's efforts to create compositions of greater density. I asked him what was the motivation behind the undertaking.
The reason I've put quite a bit of time and effort into collecting and editing Carulli's sonatas and overtures, and there's a lot of them, is to get them together in one place, easily accessible, edited polyphonically, so we can more easily see what the music actually is, and with a bit of information relating to style and an approach to bringing the music to life. So players in general can become more aware of them, appreciate them, and hopefully perform them for our audiences to enjoy. And the sonata genre, it's a handy way to appreciate a composer's work. Sonatas are compositional rather than improvisatory, and Carulli's sonatas run the gamut from the quite comfortable to full concert works in a variety of sonata styles, and I feel they're more than worthy of our attention, and it's overdue. But we need to understand the style, play the music well, and really bring it to life. Thanks again, Fabio, and I really enjoy your podcast. All right, cheers.
This is Marcello Fantoni playing one of the overtures Opus 6 by Ferdinando Carulli. There is an area of Carulli's production that I find particularly fascinating, that is program music. What is that? Music whose form and content are inspired by a program, that is, a plot that can be a novel, a poem, a historical event, or even a meteorological event. These are the forerunners of 20th century film soundtracks. Carulli wrote music called Napoleon the Great, The Loves on Venus and Adonis, a very funny piece called The Giraffe in Paris, The Storming of Algiers, and a fantasy called The Storm. Carulli's music has a quality that I find very, very attractive. His music absorbs the accent of Neapolitan folk music. Precisely because of the commercial imperative, he developed a language in which the harmony is built upon open bass notes, E, A, D, and G. This lends itself wonderfully to mirroring Neapolitan canzonetas and tarantellas, which are also based on very simple harmony too. In a way, he's a pioneer in blurring the line between refined court music and commercial popular music. flutist Jean-Pierre Rampal and the guitarist Alexandre Lagoya playing Carulli's Nocturne Opus 190. I will be very much pleased if this episode can whet your appetite for Carulli's music. A good starting point is to get to know Stanley Yates' new publications of the complete sonatas and overtures by Carulli. The other one, of course, is to listen to our playlist that accompanies this episode and can be accessed in the description. Next month we'll have a very different composer, Georg Philipp Telemann. In the meantime, I would like to thank Henrique Caldas for technical works and Monique Zacheski for the general management of GuitarCoop. Thank you very much for following us, and see you next month. Guitar Co-op Podcasts. Great composers. Conceived and presented by Fabio Zanon.